sold with tears in her eyes until a cowboy whispered, "Your life will be joyful now." Her eyes were wet, and she did not try to stop the tears anymore. They slipped down quietly, one after another as she stared at the ground. Her name did not matter to anyone there. To the crowd, she was only a young woman who had come with no family standing beside her. She wore a simple dress, old but clean, the kind that showed she tried to keep her dignity even when life gave her very little. Her shoes were worn out and the dust stuck to their sides. Every small detail of her appearance told a story of struggle, though no one bothered to read it. This place was known in the area for hiring workers and making quick deals. Farmers, traders, and landowners came here to find help for their lands and animals. For many, it was business. For some, it was opportunity. For her, it was desperation. She had not come by choice. Life had pushed her here slowly, step by step, until there was nowhere else to go. Only a year ago, her life looked different. It was not easy back then either, but at least it felt like her own. She lived in a small house on the edge of a village, where mornings began with the sound of birds and evenings ended with quiet prayers. Her parents had passed away when she was young, leaving her to grow up faster than she should have. Still, she worked hard, believing that honesty and patience would one day bring peace. But life does not always listen to belief. The troubles started when sickness came to the house like an uninvited guest. Medical bills piled up, work became less, and the little savings she had disappeared. People who once promised help slowly stopped visiting. Doors that were once open began to close. She sold small things first, then bigger ones, until there was nothing left except herself and her hope. The day she decided to come here was the hardest. She remembered sitting alone on the floor of her empty room, holding her knees close to her chest. She cried until there were no tears left, asking herself how her life had reached this point. She did not want pity. She did not want to be seen as weak. She just wanted a chance to survive. Now, standing in the yard, she felt every eye on her, even when no one was truly looking. Conversations buzzed around her. People discussed prices, weather, crops, and animals. Their voices blended into a dull noise that made her head ache. She tried to focus on her breathing, telling herself to stay calm, to stay strong just a little longer. A man nearby laughed loudly, and the sound made her flinch. It reminded her how fragile she felt. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, but the tears kept coming. She wondered if anyone could see how scared she was, how badly she wanted to run away. But where would she go? There was no home waiting for her anymore. As she stood there, memories filled her mind like waves that would not stop. She remembered herself as a child running barefoot on soft ground, laughing without fear. She remembered her mother's gentle voice and her father's tired but kind smile. They had taught her to be honest, to respect herself, and to believe that every person had value. Thinking of them made her chest hurt. If they could see me now, she thought, would they still be proud? She turned slightly away from the crowd, hoping no one would notice. But in a place like this, sadness did not stand out. Many people came here carrying heavy stories of their own. A man with a loud voice stepped forward and began speaking to the crowd. He talked fast, listing details, rules, and conditions. She listened without really hearing. Her mind felt far away, as if she were watching herself from a distance. Each word made her feel smaller, like she was disappearing piece by piece. People glanced at her, some with curiosity, others with no expression at all. A few whispered to each other, their eyes quickly moving away when she looked up. She felt exposed, like her pain was on display. The shame was worse than the fear. She had always believed she could stand on her own. Now standing there, she felt like she had failed herself. Her hands began to shake, so she pressed them together harder. She focused on the ground, watching the dust move with every step around her. She counted her breaths, a small habit she had learned to calm herself. In, out, in, out. Still, her heart raced. She thought about the path that led her here. It was not one big mistake, but many small losses. A job that ended, a promise that broke, a friend who stopped answering. Each one took something from her until she had nothing left to hold on to. People often said, "Be strong," but they never explained how to stay strong when everything kept falling apart. A soft breeze passed through the yard, lifting a few strands of her hair. For a moment, it felt like a gentle touch, and she closed her eyes. She wished she could disappear into that breeze, be carried somewhere far away where no one knew her story. When she opened her eyes again, the crowd seemed closer. The noise grew louder. The man's voice rose as he continued speaking. She realized the moment she had been dreading was coming closer. Her stomach tightened, and her chest felt heavy, like something was pressing down on it. She wanted to speak, to say something, anything, but no words came. Her voice felt trapped inside her. She wondered if this was how people lost themselves, not all at once but quietly, while standing in the middle of a crowd. She thought about walking away. Her feet felt glued to the ground, but her mind begged her to move. Even if she ran, what would change? Hunger would still wait. Loneliness would still follow. At least here there was a chance, even if it was painful. Another tear fell, then another. She did not bother wiping them away this time. If this was the moment her life changed, then the tears were part of it. They were proof that she still felt something, that she was still human. She lifted her head slightly and looked around. The sky above was wide and clear, almost unfair in its beauty. She wondered how the world could look so peaceful while her heart was breaking. Somewhere far away, life was going on as usual. Children were playing, families were eating together, and here she was, standing alone, feeling like time had stopped. She whispered a silent prayer, not asking for miracles, just for strength. Strength to get through this moment. Strength to keep her dignity, no matter what happened next. Strength to believe that her life was not over yet. As the man's voice reached its peak, she felt her heart sink. This was it. The moment she had feared since the night she made her decision. She took a deep breath and stood a little straighter. If she had to face this, she would face it standing. No one knew that behind her quiet face was a storm of emotions. Fear, shame, hope, and exhaustion all mixed together. No one knew how many nights she had gone to sleep hungry, how many times she had cried in silence, how many times she had told herself not to give up. To the crowd, she was just another person in a difficult situation. But inside, she was still the same girl who once dreamed of a simple, happy life. She still believed, even if only a little, that kindness existed somewhere in the world. As the noise around her continued, she did not notice one pair of eyes watching her differently. She did not see the quiet figure standing a little apart from the crowd, noticing her tears, her posture, and the way she tried so hard to be brave. For now, all she knew was her own pain and the heavy feeling in her chest. She stood there, sold by circumstances, not by choice, with tears in her eyes and a future she could not yet see. The first part of her story was ending, not with joy but with silent courage. What she did not know was that this moment, as painful as it was, would soon become the turning point of her life. The noise in the yard slowly changed, becoming louder and more focused. Voices rose and fell, numbers were spoken, and people moved closer together. The air felt heavy, filled with dust and tension. She stood still, trying to keep herself calm, even though her heart was beating fast. Her eyes burned from crying, but she forced herself to look ahead. She did not want to seem weak, even though inside she felt like she might break at any moment. As people continued to talk and point, she felt more alone than ever. It was strange how a person could be surrounded by so many others and still feel invisible. She told herself again and again that this was only a moment, that moments passed, even painful ones. Still, the fear did not leave her. Then, without warning, something changed. Among the crowd was a man who had not spoken much. He stood a little away from the others, leaning against a wooden fence. He wore simple clothes, dusty boots, and a wide hat that shaded his face. He looked like someone who spent most of his life outdoors. His posture was calm, not rushed like the others. While many eyes moved quickly from one thing to another, his eyes stayed in one place. They were on her. At first, she did not notice him. Her mind was too full of her own worries, but the man noticed everything about her. The way her shoulders were stiff, as if she was holding herself together. The way her hands were pressed tightly, trying to stop the shaking. Most of all, he noticed her tears. They were quiet tears, not loud or dramatic, but honest and deep. Something about her expression made him pause. He had seen many people in difficult situations before. Life on the land was not easy and hardship was common. But there was something different about her. She did not look lazy or careless. She looked tired, like someone who had fought for a long time and finally reached the end of her strength. He straightened up slowly, his boots making a soft sound against the ground. The people around him were focused on the deal, on numbers and choices. No one noticed when he stepped forward except one person. Her eyes lifted for a brief second and they met his. That moment felt strange to her. His gaze was steady, not cold, not judging. It did not make her feel small. Instead, it made her feel seen. She quickly looked away, unsure why her chest suddenly felt tight. She told herself it meant nothing. She had learned not to expect kindness. The man moved closer as the voices around them continued. He listened, but his attention was still on her. He could tell she was trying very hard not to fall apart. He respected that. In his life, he had learned that real strength was often quiet. When it was his turn to speak, he did not shout like the others. His voice was calm, clear, and steady. It cut through the noise not because it was loud but because it was certain. People turned to look at him, surprised by the change in tone. She felt her breath catch. She had not expected this. Her heart pounded harder and fear rushed back in. She wondered who this man was and what he wanted. Her mind filled with questions she could not answer. The man stepped closer, but he kept a respectful distance. He did not point at her. He did not treat her like an object. Instead, he spoke as if he were talking about a person who mattered. That alone made the moment feel different. The crowd quieted slightly, watching with interest. Some were curious, some impatient. To them, this was just another pause in the process. To her, it felt like time had slowed down. She stared at the ground again, her face warm with shame and confusion. She did not know whether to feel hope or fear. Hope had disappointed her too many times before. Fear, at least, was familiar. The man noticed how she avoided eye contact. He understood. Slowly, gently, he spoke again, asking if he could look at her face. His voice carried no demand, only a request. She hesitated. Every part of her wanted to stay hidden. But something inside her, something small but strong, told her to lift her head. When she did, their eyes met once more. Up close, she saw that his face showed signs of a hard life too. Lines from sun and wind marked his skin. His eyes held seriousness but also warmth. He did not smile, but his expression was kind. In that moment, she felt like he could see past her tears and fear, straight into her heart. The noise of the crowd faded into the background. It was as if the world had narrowed down to just the two of them. She forgot where she was for a second. She forgot why she was there. All she could feel was the strange calm that came from being truly noticed. The man leaned in slightly, lowering his voice so only she could hear. His words were simple, but they carried weight. "Your life will be joyful now," he said quietly. Her heart skipped a beat. She did not understand what he meant. The words sounded impossible, almost unreal. Joy felt like something from another life, another person's story, not hers. She searched his face, trying to find doubt or trickery, but she found none. Before she could respond, he stepped back and spoke again, addressing the crowd. His actions were clear and confident. There was no hesitation in him. The people around began to murmur, surprised by his decision. She stood frozen, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to believe him. Another part warned her not to. Life had taught her to be careful, to expect disappointment. Still, his words echoed in her head, refusing to leave. "Your life will be joyful now." As the moment passed, she realized her tears had stopped falling. Her eyes were still wet, but something had shifted inside her. The heavy pressure in her chest felt slightly lighter. She did not know what would happen next, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a small spark of curiosity instead of only fear. The crowd slowly returned to their business. Some people looked disappointed, others uninterested. For them, the moment was over. For her, it was just beginning. The man gave her one last look, calm and reassuring, before stepping aside. He did not stay to watch her reaction. He did not wait for thanks. It was as if he trusted that his words had already done what they needed to do. She stood there trying to understand what had just happened. Her future was still unclear, still uncertain, but something inside her had changed. The hopelessness that once filled her completely now had a small crack in it, and through that crack a little light had entered. She took a slow, deep breath. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for sure. This moment, this unexpected pause, had broken the darkness that surrounded her. And though she did not yet believe in joy, she could no longer say she believed only in despair. Without knowing it, she had just stepped into the second part of her life's journey. The journey away from the crowded yard felt unreal to her. As she walked beside the man, the noise slowly faded behind them. Each step took her farther from the place where she had felt so small. The ground beneath her feet changed from hard dust to open road, and the air felt lighter. She still did not know what waited ahead, but she knew she was moving forward, not standing still anymore. The man walked at a steady pace, not too fast, not too slow. He did not rush her, and he did not speak right away. That silence felt kind, not uncomfortable. It gave her time to breathe, to let her thoughts settle. Her heart was still racing, but now it beat with something new mixed into the fear. It felt like curiosity. She glanced at him from time to time. He kept his eyes ahead, focused on the path. There was nothing demanding about him. He did not act like he owned the road or the moment. That made her feel safer than she expected. After a while, he spoke gently, asking if she was tired. The question surprised her. No one had asked about her comfort in a long time. She nodded slightly, unsure what to say. He slowed his steps even more. They reached a simple wagon waiting near the edge of the land. It was old but well cared for. He helped her up without touching her unnecessarily, then climbed up himself. The ride began quietly, the wheels rolling over the ground in a steady rhythm. As the land stretched out before them, she noticed how open everything was. Fields spread wide under the sky, and the wind moved freely. She had forgotten what space felt like. For so long, her world had felt tight and heavy, full of worry. Here, her chest felt less tight with every mile. She wondered where they were going. Questions filled her mind, but fear kept them trapped inside. She did not want to sound ungrateful or foolish. Still, the man seemed to sense her thoughts. "You don't have to be afraid," he said calmly, without looking at her. "You will have time to understand everything." The sight made her heart soften. It was not grand or rich, but it felt honest. He showed her a small room inside the house. It was clean, with a bed, a chair, and a small window that let in the light. Nothing fancy, but to her it felt like a gift. Privacy, safety, space to breathe. "This is yours," he said simply. "Rest if you need to." Her throat felt tight. All she could manage was a quiet thank you. He nodded and left her alone without another word. When the door closed, she sat down slowly on the bed. The room was silent except for the sound of wind outside. For the first time in many days, she allowed herself to relax. Her body felt heavy with exhaustion, and her eyes filled with tears again, but these tears were different. They were not only from pain, they carried relief too. That night, sleep came quickly. The next morning, she woke to sunlight coming through the window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then the memories returned, but they did not bring the same fear. Instead, she felt a quiet determination. She stepped outside and saw the man already at work. He moved with ease, caring for the land and animals like someone who understood them deeply. He noticed her and gave a small nod, nothing more. No pressure, no commands. He showed her simple tasks later, asking if she was willing to help. She was grateful for the chance. Working made her feel useful again. Each small task gave her a sense of purpose she had been missing. Days passed slowly, one after another. There was no rush, no harsh words, no raised voices. Life followed a steady rhythm: wake up, work, eat, rest. It was simple, but it healed something inside her. She still carried fear with her. At times, she expected kindness to disappear suddenly the way it had before in her life, but it did not. The man stayed the same every day. Calm, fair, respectful. He did not ask her questions she was not ready to answer. He did not push her to share her past. He let her speak when she wanted to and listened without judgment when she did. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sun lower into the sky, she finally spoke more than a few words. She talked about her parents, her struggles, the road that led her here. Her voice shook at times, but she kept going. He listened quietly, his eyes on the horizon. When she finished, he did not give advice or empty promises. He simply said, "You survived more than most people ever will." She began to smile without forcing herself. The land, the routine, and the steady kindness slowly rebuilt what life had broken. She learned new skills and gained confidence in her own strength. Each day proved that she was capable. Each sunrise reminded her that life could continue, even after deep pain. She also began to understand the meaning behind his whisper. Joy did not come as loud happiness. It came quietly in moments of peace, safety, and self-respect. It came from knowing she mattered, not because of what she could give, but because she existed. One day, as she worked alone under the open sky, she paused and looked around. The fear that once controlled her was no longer in charge. It still existed, but it no longer defined her. She realized then that her life had already begun to change, not through grand promises, but through steady care and the freedom to heal at her own pace. This place, once unknown and frightening, had become the ground where her broken pieces slowly came back together. And though she did not yet know what the future held, she knew she was no longer lost. The third part of her journey was not about sudden happiness. It was about growth, dignity, and learning to trust life again. And with every passing day, she stepped closer to the joy she once believed was impossible. Time moved forward quietly, the way it does when life finally finds a steady path. The days no longer felt heavy to her. They felt full. Each morning she woke with purpose instead of fear. The sunlight through the window no longer reminded her of loss, but of another chance to live. She had changed more than she realized. Her hands were stronger now, used to honest work. Her mind was clearer, no longer crowded with endless worry. She could think about tomorrow without feeling pain in her chest. Simple things began to matter again: the sound of birds, the smell of earth after work, the calm silence of the evening. The man noticed these changes, though he never pointed them out. He respected her growth by allowing it to be her own. He did not take credit for it. He believed people healed best when they were trusted to do so. One evening, after finishing the day's work, they sat outside as they often did. The sky was painted with soft colors and the land looked peaceful. She realized that this place, which once felt unfamiliar, now felt like part of her life. Not a cage, not a duty, but a chapter. She spoke that evening with a steady voice. She thanked him, not just for shelter or work, but for respect. She told him that his kindness had given her something she thought she had lost forever: belief in herself. He listened carefully. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "You did this," he said. "I only gave you space." It was something she had rebuilt inside herself, piece by piece. From that day on, she began thinking about her future with confidence. She started planning small goals, learning more, saving little by little, dreaming again, not wildly but realistically. For the first time, the future did not scare her. She also began helping others in quiet ways: a kind word, extra effort, a listening ear. She understood pain now, and that understanding made her gentle but strong. She realized her difficult past had shaped her, not broken her. The seasons changed, and with them her life continued to grow. The land taught her patience. The work taught her pride. The steady routine taught her balance. She no longer measured her worth by what others decided. She measured it by her effort, her honesty, and her growth. One day, while standing under the open sky, she remembered the girl she once was, the one standing in the dusty yard with tears in her eyes. The memory no longer hurt the way it used to. Instead, it filled her with respect for herself. That girl had survived the worst moment of her life and kept going. She finally understood the truth behind the whisper that had changed everything. "Your life will be joyful now" did not mean life would be perfect. It meant life would be real, meaningful, and free from fear. Joy had come quietly. It came through dignity, through choice, through healing. It came from learning that her life had value no matter where it started. She was no longer defined by what happened to her. She was defined by how she rose afterward. As she looked ahead, she knew challenges would still come. Life always had challenges, but now she trusted herself to face them. She was no longer afraid of falling because she knew she could stand again. Her story did not end with tears. It ended with strength. And though the world might never know her name, her journey mattered, because it proved that even in the darkest moments, a new life can begin, with kindness, patience, and the courage to believe again.